Good morning. Good morning. Afternoon, some places, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Good morning, Fowler. Hey, Maddie. Oh, he's so handsome. Hey, OnlyFan. Good morning, film. Hey, therapist. What's up, Jason? Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning to all. Good morning to you. Oh, wait. I tell you. Well, yesterday we definitely got a lot of stuff in. Well, we got excitement because we got a trial, right? It'll be coming up later today. And I done figured out a good way. Hey, Tanya, good morning. How are you, sweetheart? Hey, Dandelions, good morning. Good morning. You say Thirsty Thursday. Okay, so did nobody go broke trying to get all the Amazon Prime stuff, did they? I just want to make sure that y'all didn't overspend, because Amazon Prime Day is like almost, they're like, oh, it's now 12% off. Oh, it's 11.5% off. Oh, it's 2% off. 2% beats no percent. No, 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 no. You're not gonna make this the biggest time too. And do you know Walmart? They like, you will not have any Prime days without us. How about we gonna have Walmart deals? And Walmart deals gonna start the day before these Prime days. Like, no, 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 no. You won't get that off on us. Not on us, not over here. I'll tell you what we will do. Walmart ain't letting nobody live down. So if you thought they were going to be beat, you got a whole nother thing coming. Because Walmart wants to be right in there. Let's see here. So did anybody make any interesting buys, like where they really, really thought they got a good deal? Because if you anything like me, I love knowing, at least I like to feel like I'm knowing that I have received a good deal. Was anybody waiting on anything? Because I know some people be building their cart from the last Prime Day. I don't know if any of y'all out here got that long list of stuff that's in your cart. I call it my wish list cart. My cart's so big on my wish list that I get exhausted from emptying stuff out of my cart in order to order what I really need. Hey, Allison, good morning. I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta go through all this emptying of my cart, save for later, because I'm probably way too lazy to do the wish list like you're supposed to do the wish list. But yeah, so there's that. And I was looking, I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta go through all of this in order to even start building a real cart, because all week I've been putting in stuff of all this dream stuff, all this stuff that if I could, I would get it. So I had to go through all of that stuff because I done built my Prime cart so big. You say it's actually a U-Haul right now? Like, no. Like, dang, I gotta take all this stuff out before I can even get started, man. I just want to create a whole new Amazon account when I do that. I'm like, why do you keep doing this to yourself, goof? Like, soon as I found out last month Amazon Prime Day was happening, I got busy. I was unstoppable on there. And I do me unstoppable. I was putting anything and everything and woulda, coulda, shouldas all up in my cart. And I do me all up in my cart. So, so if you guys don't know, you say you got an electric massage table a few years ago for Amazon. Dang, somebody had to deliver. Oh, you said somebody had to deliver it. Gee whiz. Yours wasn't 2-day shipping at all. It's very big, Jason. Like, it's big enough in order for me to want to start over and start a new account. Right. Well, yeah. So I got my coffee. I got my little OE cup, and I call myself light. I I got my cup. I probably should be using my cup, but my first dose, my first injection has to be this big. Jason, gone. Look, it's very big. Wow, yeah, it's very big. What did you want therapists in there doing? I mean, we're not getting blue balls today, so I don't know. We have no blue balls. I mean, yesterday they actually let us get it off. I was like, they let us get it off up in there. We had no blue balls. Where's Merelda with the balls? She must be hiding. Oh, Dandy. Now that definitely that's what I need. Shoot. After my first dose, I'll be okay. Like I can have some more, but yeah, I'm trying to see what they got going on this thing. I don't know. YouTube didn't change some stuff around. It's about to get on my nerves too, because I don't know what they got going on. And if they know anything about me, I can't really deal when you change stuff. Like they changed the stuff, and I just learned how to do the stuff that they had. Like, how dare you? So, as y'all can see, the title of the thing is the Sarah Hartsfield closing arguments and the verdict, right? I know that I did post the update through day 5. I'm assuming Monday I did not do an update. Did I do an update? Yeah, I did do an update. That's when y'all no show, no call on me, but that's cool. So Monday I did do an update. I did not do an update on Tuesday, and apparently it kind of went the way I kind of thought it was gonna go. She did not take the stand. The state closed their case, and of course they did closing arguments, and we do have, and it's also a verdict. So if you've seen the verdict or anything like that, just please no spoilers, and I'll put that in the banner for anybody that's coming in. Just so everybody's aware, this is the only part of the trial that they will actually show us. So hopefully my updates were kind of informative in regards to it. Trying to put all these players in the game. I still, no matter what is going on, unfortunately, we were not like in the courtroom like we are with gavel to gavel coverage. I do think she's guilty, and I'm hoping the jury got the guilty right in this well, I guess it's real difficult because certain fact for me, they brought so much of her past in there, all the things that she had allegedly been involved with, nothing that she was actually convicted of, that I don't know if they convicted her on exactly what happened to that day. If that makes sense. So, I mean, she guilty. So maybe it's one of those things where her past caught up with her. Like where people saying like, hey, if I think, and me and Jason talked about it the other day, like if Casey Anthony went to prison for something or was incarcerated for something that was very minor, considering what happened with her daughter and how we all felt like she was guilty, would we be okay with that? And y'all, I kind of like at a crossroads with that because, yeah, I'm at a crossroads, but whatever. Hey, Hazel, good morning. But I won't talk y'all to death on that one. Let me see those ones and those sweet pea gangs in the chat room, and we'll go ahead and get ready, and we'll get in this courtroom. We'll see what it do today. And then we got our next trial that we're gonna go on in that courtroom too today. So got awesome things going on. Let's see. So at least with these these closing statements, we will get an opportunity to kind of see what evidence they presented. And that's why I wanted to kind of go back and look at it, because this should be a summary from each side of what they did in the actual courtroom. It's not a day-by-day breakdown, but it is each side. Therapist, you really want to get in the courtroom. I guess everybody else is just okay with me up here talking. So we shall do that until I see the ones in the sweet pea gangs. Unless you telling me you driving and you haven't tapped and you ain't tapped in, I don't understand. Okay, there we go. There, Dandy says she want to go in there and get some action. She want to see what's going on in the courtroom. She don't mind listening to Sweet Pea talk stuff, but she want to see what's going on in the courtroom this morning. I'm assuming everybody else just lurking, and I'm gonna give y'all a pass on that lurking this morning. Absolutely, I'll give you a pass, I guess, at all. You say I don't know what one means, but you here. I be because sometimes one mean let's go. What's up, OnlyFans? You say you here. I'm gonna put this one in here. Let's get this show on the road. Our ones, Hazel, they mean one, let's get in the courtroom. If you don't put one or a sweet pea gang. So if you put those in, then what happens is, oh, nice, Dandelions. Was it oh, you have to let us know what kind of court hearing it, what kind of case it was in the chat. So the ones in the sweet pea gang mean y'all tired of me talking? No, not tired of me talking. We ready to get in the courtroom and get it on. and yeah, and get it on. Or yeah, we ready to go watch our case for the day. Okay, let's see. So let's get started here.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. The defendant's deceptions, clever little half-truths, her performance, it can get over on some people. She's really convincing if you don't look too closely, if you don't ask too many questions or make her angry. But just like the spider and the fly, where the fly is drawn into the spider's webs, Joe Hartsfield unfortunately was drawn to the defendant and he got caught in her webs. Defense counsel made a lot of promises to you in open that were not fulfilled. There is no evidence, other than the defendant's own words, that she was actually under the influence of narcotics. In fact, the evidence is to the opposite. There's actually no evidence that his mismanagement of diabetes led to this heart issue that killed him. The statement that Joe's family had no evidence that she did this. Your family member is desperately trying to leave a woman who you know killed her fiance, who you know, because of her own words, that she's being investigated for a murder for hire, that you know, you have watched the violent swings in her communicating with you. And you know that your son and your brother is scared for his life. You know his worst fear, and you know he's hospitalized for that fear coming to life. And you know that the doctors who are treating him are suspicious of the same person you are, but they had no evidence. Defense counsel told you that the evidence was going to show that Joseph Hartsfield suffered a stroke. And in fact, you heard definitive testimony that that's not what happened to him. Defense counsel told you that Detective Rocks made the decision to bring her to court without any investigation, and you saw the exact opposite. You heard from Detective Rocks that she poured through the voluminous records in this case. You saw how precise she was on the stand. You knew some of the people that she spoke with in this investigation. And to call this no investigation is an incredible mischaracterization. To say that we don't know the who, the where, the when, it's just a gross mischaracterization of what you saw play out during this trial. If the defendant wanted to kill her husband, that she held a lot of contempt for, how would she do it? What is the way that provides the best defense for her? The most obvious one. And had it happened somewhere else, had it happened with a different family, she probably would have gotten away with it. But Joe's family was paying attention. The medical staff was paying attention. Detective Rocks was paying attention. Sarah miscalculated who she could do this to and where she could do it. Think back to what defense counsel has tried to draw out of witnesses when things don't matter. Think back to the second witness, Joe's sister, Jeannie Hartsfield. Think back to his mom. What was he fighting with them about? What type of diabetes Joe had? When he knew the medical records were very clear. What was the point of that? That Joe should have been low whenever every documented thing says that he ran high? The defendant thought she was the smartest person in any room and that no one could catch her and that she was going to get away with it because that's what she's always done. When defense asked the doctors, when I asked the doctors how many times they have had an insulin overdose And then how many times they'd seen someone die of it. What was their answer? This is not something that people in this country, with the medical care that we have, that have lived with this condition for this long, die from. It is a statistical problem with how she killed him. It's a practical impossibility based on how he treated his own diabetes and how he died. Blood sugars are easy to fix. You heard this repeatedly. This is something that was throwing them off in the hospital because this is not how a body should react. If you accidentally administer too much insulin to yourself when there's not the intent to kill you, when there's not the waiting and watching you die of it, this is a treatable thing. But that's not what got to happen. That's not what happened for Joe. Because it wasn't an accident. It was the defendant making sure he got enough insulin in his body that he couldn't recover. Defense counsel wants you to focus on the fact that Joe had uncontrolled diabetes, when in reality, that uncontrolled was Joe being high. And you heard his fear, his terror of being low. That was intentional on his part. He didn't want to risk being too low. But defense counsel wants you to focus on the uncontrolled part, because that much better fits their narrative of really Joe just did this to himself. But you saw the Dexcom readings. You read the medical examiner's determination. You heard the testimony from the doctors. This was something that happened to him, not because of him. And what should you make of the people that came and testified about their experiences with the defendant? Is every person in Sarah Hartsfield's life just trying to conspire against her? Or does it show statistical impossibility? I told you from the beginning, and now we're here. You've seen it. She's a performer. Another well-timed tear, another look over her shoulder to the camera, another carrying of her prop that she forgets sometimes and doesn't seem to touch unless she knows someone's watching. It's showmanship for her. Another fly caught in her web. It is really, really rare to encounter someone of this nature. And for the good of the community, for the good of the world, you 12 have to form an opinion. You have to do something. For far too long, too many people have known and have done nothing. You know what she did. There are people who didn't have faith in her being held accountable because she's really slippery. She's really effective at making a very attractive web. And she's good at tangling people so tightly into this web. But you are ready and you have the opportunity and the duty to right this wrong. You can fix what other people have failed to do. You can stand up and you can say, enough, enough. These are the elements. These are the only elements that the state has to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And we went over these in voir dire. I don't have to prove, as defense counsel continually asks, I don't have to prove how she did it. I would love to know. I would love to know how she did it, but that's not one of my elements. Did she intentionally or knowingly cause the death of Joseph Hartsfield. I don't have to prove that she's not a likable person. I don't have to prove that he is a likable person. I don't have to prove why she did it. Those are my elements that the judge just read to you in your charge. And if you find that I've met these elements beyond a reasonable doubt, and you vote anything other than not guilty, you are holding me to a higher burden, and you are violating the oath that you took. You have heard all of the admissible evidence at this point. What I say, what defense counsel says, not evidence. It's obvious that there have been things that the court has ruled are improper for you to hear. The only thing that you can consider is the evidence that came from that stand and the evidence that's been admitted in trial. And that alone is enough to prove to you that this defendant committed this act with that intent. And you know where she did it? She did it right here in our home. She did it in Chambers County. For a moment, I just want to go over the jury charge with you. The most important part of the law is on the first page. A person commits the offense of murder if she intentionally or knowingly causes the death of an individual. Those are my elements. And you heard about the law regarding extraneous offenses. And you can consider that if I've met that burden as to those offenses beyond a reasonable doubt. Some of you may think, yep, that one's proven. Some of you may think, I'm not sure on that one. That's an individual choice. What must be unanimous is your verdict of guilty. That page, I would submit to you, is the most important. And that's page 8 of the jury charge. I can't tell you if she put the needle in him herself or if she grabs his hand and uses his own hand while he's drugged by her drugs when he's unconscious, and she uses his own hand to do it. I can't tell you that. And there's a reason I can't tell you that. Because murderers hide how they murder people generally. But you get to use your reason and your logic and your common sense. And you also get to know that that's not one of my elements that defense counsel wants to hold me to. Defense counsel would have you believe that we're here today because a rogue detective performed a shoddy investigation and the state, the government, has railroaded an innocent woman. But we're here today because a woman, the defendant, murdered her husband in cold blood. That's why you have been summoned and you have sat through testimony and you have paid attention, and now is your call. And I think most of you probably know where you are. I've watched you pay attention. You can look at the evidence, of course, but when you go to the back, I would recommend that you pick a 4-person and you take a quick poll to see where you are. Some of you are probably already there. Some of you may want to look at certain things. You can request some of the evidence. You can request all the evidence. Or after your poll, you can say, actually, we're good. I'm going to sit down for a moment, and defense counsel is going to be able to talk to you. And I want you to pay attention to what he says. And I want you, again, like I said in open, lean in and pay attention to what he's asking you to focus on. He is a skilled attorney. He is really, really good at his job. So don't fall into that web. Don't fall into that trap. When he's asking you to look at the whole and not the whole picture, lean in and see what he is arguing to you. What he tries to convince you is an element when it's not. Listen to how he tries to make the pieces fit that don't belong. And remember what your job is. Thank you.
Mr. Darling.
May it please the court. I think that this case is exactly what I told you that this case would be in the beginning. The state is telling you a story, a narrative. The state conceded to you from reading its own indictment that it can't prove its case because its own indictment tells you that Joe died in an unknown manner and means. Ms. Vargas even told you in opening, quote, "Something happened that made that man's blood sugar crash." She told you in closing, "I can't tell you what happened." The medical examiner, her boss, her colleagues, all told you that Joe died in an undetermined manner. That is not a homicide. Joe suffered from severe medical problems. 1, uncontrolled type 1 diabetes. 2, severe heart issues. 3, peripheral neuropathy. 4, sleep apnea. And 5, intestinal issues. Meanwhile, Sarah was under the influence of multiple narcotics from a recent breast surgery. The law is unequivocally clear that Sarah had no duty to act. That is, a failure to act is not criminal. Although I do concede it's not good practice. It's not good practice. Joe administered that insulin to himself. Why else is the state focusing on all these extraneous acts rather than focusing on the indictment? It's because they can't prove the case. Now, I'm going to go over some pieces of the charge with you. If you look at page 4, it says all persons are presumed to be innocent and no person may be convicted of an offense unless each element of the offense is proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember back in jury selection, we talked about how wrongful convictions occur. And each and every one of you told me that wrongful convictions occur. How do we prevent wrongful convictions? We prevent them by enforcing that burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember, I told you back in jury selection, if I'm the state and I'm trying to involuntarily take your child away from you or involuntarily have you committed to a mental institution, on a scale of 1 to 10, everybody said they would want a 10. And that is under a clear and convincing evidentiary standard, which is a lower burden of proof than proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Deliver your verdict with a clear conscience. How do you deliver your verdict with a clear conscience? You do that by enforcing the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. What does it feel like? Well, maybe you thought you locked the door, you forgot to go back and check the door handle, you're driving off, and you have a nagging feeling. If you have any sort of nagging feeling, you do not have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Finally, I want to take on this notion that it must be true because the state says so. And why else would the state be investing all this time, money, and resources? Well, that assumes that the state is altruistic or the state is selfless. But the state has motives. Their motive is to justify 1, the arrest, and 2, the filing of the indictment. The state is a plaintiff. The state filed a lawsuit against Sarah. Sarah is not on trial. The state is on trial.
Your Honor, this is a misstatement of the law.
Move on.
The state is on trial because they are a plaintiff and they filed a lawsuit
Objection,
against
Your
Sarah.
Honor, this is a misstatement of the law.
Sustain. This is a criminal case. Move on.
The state has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden for the state is a high burden. It's such a high burden because the very principles upon which this government were founded are at stake. Life liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Also, the law provides that a person who omits to commit an act does not commit an offense and has no duty to act. Page 2 of your jury charge. A person is criminally responsible if the result would not have occurred but for her conduct. Conduct includes an act, omission, or possession. A person who omits to perform an act does not commit an offense unless the law provides that the omission is an offense or otherwise provides that she has a duty to perform the act. With respect to murder, the law does not provide that an omission is an offense or otherwise provides that she has a duty to act. Every offense, it requires conduct, either 1, an act, 2, omission, or 3, possession. The law is unequivocally clear that Sarah's failure to render aid or assistance is not a crime. Notice this was law enforcement's initial theory. That's why Detective Rocks was initially charging this case as a criminally negligent homicide. Notice that Jeannie, she told Detective Rocks in that January 9, 2023 email that Sarah had intentionally left Joe to die. Not that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. She didn't allege that because there's absolutely no proof. None. Notice that it's even law enforcement's false belief that Sarah had a duty to act. Officer Yeatman told you so, but that's not the law. The law is unequivocally clear that Sarah's failure to render aid or assistance is not a crime. It's not good practice, period. It's not good practice, period. However, the law unequivocally provides that it does not make her criminally liable. We discussed back in jury selection, what if I was a surgeon, the only board certified surgeon, Chambers County, we're rubbernecking on the highway, I see a man dying on the side of the road. I choose to go ahead and keep driving and go play golf rather than render aid or assistance to that man. Detective Rocks cannot come back and prosecute me. Am I a bad person? Yes, but Sarah is not on trial for being a bad person. She's on trial for allegedly administering insulin. Her kids told you that she's a bad person, but that does not make you a murderer. She's on trial for murder, not for being a bad person. The policy behind that law is that we should only hold people criminally responsible for what they do, not from what they omit to do. Thus, Sarah can only be held responsible for Joe's death if it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt that she administered insulin to him. And 1, she didn't do that. And 2, there's no proof, none. The prosecutor even told you that. In closing, the state knows this. That's why they want you to focus on all of this unsubstantiated innuendo. So, looking at the charge, you are not to consider evidence of such a wrongful act at all unless you find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did in fact commit the wrongful act. Even if you find that the defendant committed a wrongful act, you may consider the evidence only for the limited purpose I've described. You may not consider this evidence to prove that the defendant is a bad person and for this reason was likely to commit the charged offense. The state is like a magician. We all like magic. It's cool, but magic is not real. What does a magician do? They have you look over there while they deceive you while they're doing something over here. It's the sleight of hand, smoke and mirrors. What did the state do? They trotted her children in to call her a bad person. The state wants you to look at all of this unsubstantiated innuendo because they have no evidence that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. We spent half of these days on extraneous offenses, calling Sarah a bad person, but they still can't prove that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. How many people testified to extraneous offenses? What, like 20? How many people testified that Sarah administered insulin to Joe? Zero. They have presented no theory. The closest they got is Miss Vargas's concoction that Sarah administered some potion to Joe. But wait, it was the hospital that administered benzos to Joe. The second closest was last week in the middle of trial. Miss Castaneda told Miss Vargas that Sarah had told her that she put something foul in water that Sarah gave to Joe. But she didn't tell the police that. She didn't put that in her sworn affidavit. She just brought that up conveniently in the middle of trial. First, the state cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt any of these extraneous offenses. FBI investigation into Heather Donahue, no arrest. The assistant U.S. attorney concluded it didn't happen. That's why he didn't indict it. All he needed was probable cause. David George recanted and said Sarah wasn't involved. Notice that David George didn't say he wasn't involved, just that Sarah wasn't. Grandmother's house fire, no arrest. The police and fire marshals investigated and concluded Sarah was not at fault. Titus Knerchel, gasoline on house, no arrest. Law enforcement did nothing. Titus's wife was never brought up in the statement to Detective Rocks. It only came up for purposes of trial. Brian Altus house fire, no arrest. Law enforcement and insurance company concluded an electrical outlet caught on fire. David Bragg, no arrest. The district attorney in investigation concluded it was self-defense. The self-defense determination is ironclad. The fact that the state is so off base on the self-defense shows you how the state is so off base here. Go back and read that. That is an ironclad letter that the county attorney provided. He said he reviewed the whole case. And you know what? What Sarah said happened actually matched the evidence on the scene. The projectiles from that letter matched exactly what Sarah said took place. Second, none of these extraneous acts can be used to conclude that Sarah is a bad person and is more likely to have committed the offense. Ask yourself, why did the state spend so much time on evidence that has nothing to do with the indictment? Because the state's own indictment tells you, after all the investigation, the state can't prove that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. In fact, they put that the manner and means are unknown. Why didn't they put in the indictment that the manner and means was due to Sarah administering insulin to Joe? One, they can't prove it. And two, they want you to contemplate convicting her on her failure to act. But the jury charge tells you you can't do that. Let's look at the real evidence. We learned that Joe and Sarah, they had been together for approximately 13 months. The family hated Sarah. Helen had a World War III with Sarah, and that was, quote, the end of the road. Jeannie also had a World War III with Sarah, and she conceded to you that she, quote, hated Sarah. Now, we know that on December 26 of 2022, Sarah had a breast implant removed. She got out of the hospital on December 28th of 2022, and she was prescribed a lot of serious pain medication, 1 hydrocodone, 2 Valium, and 3 gabapentin. She also had a drain on the left side of her body, which made it difficult for her to move. She came home and she got into a fight with Joe. She was so upset with Joe because the house was a mess. This led to Joe aimlessly driving around. Jeannie told Joe, you can't do that. You have severe diabetes, you go up and down, you need stability. So she implored Joe to come home, which Joe did. Now, Joe was unquestionably thinking about going separate ways from Sarah, including opening a personal bank account. Joe didn't fear death or that he would be killed by Sarah. This is evidenced by the fact that he went home and stayed there. But his family did express concerns to Joe based on that prior self-defense death and the FBI incident involving David George. That's why Joe left that voicemail in a joking manner that he didn't get shot. Now, it is possible that in between December 29th and January 6th, they reconciled. But we don't know that. In fact, we do know that Sarah was making other plans as well. But the bottom line is that we don't know if they were going to definitively divorce. In fact, Joe's own mother told you that when she was at the hospital and she told Sarah that Joe was going to divorce you, she was shocked. On January 6, 2023, Sarah was still on her pain meds. Joe returned early in the morning from work, and he went to a job interview in the Woodlands, returning home in the early afternoon. He ate rice, broccoli, and cheese that Sarah made him, and he went to bed. Sarah did say that she passed to him her long and short long and short acting insulin pens. Joe's diabetes, according to Dr. Knight, was, quote, very severe and, quote, very uncontrolled. His own family and Dr. Inakua all agreed that he had severe diabetes. Ladies and gentlemen, he was hospitalized 3 times overnight for being DKA. This wasn't like his dad, who, remember, his dad was hypoglycemic, and he literally had, he got helped in the EMS vehicle. No, Joe had to go to a hospital overnight 3 times to literally save his life. 2 of these overnight hospital visits were within 1 year of his passing. The state and these professionals, they argue, oh, he was just scared of being low. No, that's not the explanation. The explanation is that he did not give a you-know-what. In fact, he should have just been scared running high, considering that he was hospitalized 3 times, including twice within the year of his passing. Joe, he lived his life like he didn't have severe diabetes, which is exactly why he was also suffering from severe complications, such as 1, heart issues, 2, peripheral neuropathy, 3, sleep apnea, and 4, intestinal issues. Dr. Nakawa even noted that although he normally ran high, she had to closely monitor Joe because there was a risk of severe hypoglycemia. So up here you can see the patient required frequent, I'm going to read it, it's really difficult. The patient required frequent adjustment of medication and close monitoring due to risk of severe hypoglycemia. And that's from the 7/15/2022 date you can see. She put it again in another record. This is from the 9/29/22 visit Joe had. Patient required frequent adjustment of insulin regimen and close monitoring due to risk of severe hypoglycemia. This is because she was administering him high amounts of insulin, and she feared insulin resistance. So here on 7/15/22, his insulin requirement is very high and raises suspicion of insulin resistance. 7/29/22, uncontrolled type 1 diabetes for many years, his insulin requirement is very high, which raises suspicions of insulin resistance. 9/29/22, his insulin requirement is very high, which raises suspicion of insulin resistance. 11/29/22, DM1, which is type 1 diabetes, low C-peptide, peptide with high insulin resistance. This led to her prescribing high amounts of insulin and metformin, which medication made him even more sensitive to insulin. Dr. Knight confirmed to you as well that he was receiving a high dosage of insulin. In fact, the last time she saw him, Dr. Inakawa, she increased the insulin amounts even higher, doubled his metformin, and told him to email her once a week, no doubt to monitor that high dosage of insulin. So clinical notes, increased Lantus 40 units twice a day based on his report of 60 daily, not improving his BG, blood glucose. I asked him to email me once a week. Ask yourself, how often have you ever had a doctor, or do you know of a doctor who wants you to contact them on a weekly basis? It's not Dr. Inakawa's fault. She was basing the amount of insulin she gave based upon Joe's words and the fact that he was persistently running high. Now notice, she did testify that if someone is not taking their insulin and all of a sudden starts taking their prescribed amounts, it could, quote, cause hypoglycemia. Question. If somebody's not taking their insulin and then all of a sudden starts taking the prescribed insulin amounts, what sort of effect does that have on a person? Answer. It could cause hypoglycemia. She then added on her own, quote, so if they go from taking only, for example, 20 units, they start to take 40 twice a day, they would have hypoglycemia. Quote, so if they go from taking only, for example, 20 units, they start to take 40 twice a day, they would have hypoglycemia. She also added, this was unquestioned, she added this, quote, Lantus is once a day always, regardless of the dose. But if I gave him 80 once a day and he has hypoglycemia, it would be difficult to reverse. Sometimes when we split the long-acting, the low hypoglycemia. So if I gave him Lantus is once a day always, regardless of the dose. But if I gave him 80 once a day and he has hypoglycemia, it would be difficult to reverse. Notice, this is exactly what happened to Joe. Now, those long and short-acting insulin pens, they have units that you have to dial. We don't know how much long-term or short-term acting insulin that Joe administered. We see that Joe, he turned into hyperglycemia, high, and he took his long and short-acting insulin. Notice how he fell precipitously. Quite frankly, he could have taken that 80 units of Lantus in one dose. We don't know. We don't know. But we do know that Dr. Inakawa said that if you're not taking your insulin, you can become hypoglycemic if you start using your insulin as prescribed. Also, Dr. Inakawa, she conceded to you that she was prescribing an irreversible amount of insulin should Joe become hypoglycemic. And notice, Dr. Inakawa was not some hired gun. I didn't go out and go find some expert to present a novel theory. She was a fact witness here in this case. In fact, she called Joe even an expert in managing his diabetes. I think each and every one of you know that he is anything but an expert in how he managed his diabetes. Now, we definitively don't know that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. Ms. Vargas has told you that, even in closing. After all the evidence, she told you. We don't know. However, Sarah is adamant that she didn't. She says that when she found him unconscious, she telephoned for emergency assistance. She says she found him at 1 o'clock to 1:30. And it's true that she did call at 2 o'clock. But she wasn't sure At the time, her husband is on his deathbed, and Sarah is not expecting a murder charge. Deputy Yeatman responds to the hospital, and they are all accusing Sarah without any evidence of having murdered Joe. Helen states, well, nobody was upset with Sarah. Jeannie says she never accused Sarah. But the bottom line is they all accused Sarah because they hated her. Detective Rocks never considered that Joe did this to himself. That wasn't investigated, period. There's no doubt about that. This is why the state wants you to focus on all the extraneous acts, because they surely don't want you to focus on the complete lack of an investigation. As a community, do we want our police prosecuting our families and our neighbors based on accusations with no evidence, based on an accusation without an investigatory foundation? This absolutely harks back to jury selection, where I told you, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. This prosecution is based solely upon accusations of family members who hated Sarah, and they made suppositions based upon Sarah's past. But you can't do that. It's in the charge that in a court of law, we don't allow prior alleged acts to show that a person is a bad person and is thus more likely to have committed the offense. Here we are at court, and it's still not figured out. That is, there's no proof that Sarah administered insulin. Sarah cooperates with law enforcement. She provides a statement that, by the way, the state objected to me showing you, and agrees with law enforcement to let them search her home, where she provided another statement, which the state didn't show you, I showed you. Lieutenant Hemingway in the state apparently is appalled that she left her husband to let them in, but they ordered her to do so. They told her, come let us in. She tried to let them in remotely. That didn't work, so she had to use her key. Rocks, again, doesn't do any investigation whatsoever. She doesn't preserve the crime scene. In fact, she doesn't initiate a crime scene. She doesn't collect any evidence whatsoever. She doesn't collect any pins. She doesn't call a crime scene technician to the scene to preserve the scene. We didn't get to test any of those pins for fingerprints or DNA. Rocks didn't do an investigation because her mind is made up to charge Sarah with attempted criminal negligent homicide. Why did she choose that theory? Because she can't prove the administration of insulin. But she can prove that Sarah didn't act based upon the Dexcom records. The problem with that theory is it's not a crime. It's not. Note that Officer Yeatman told you when they were in the house that there were only 2 insulin pens by Joe. Note that Lieutenant Hemingway told you that Sarah brought the other insulin pens to the nightstand. So, what were the bedside tables like? The one side I remember, I believe it was the right side of the bed, had a bottle of prescription pills. I do not recall what they were. And then I believe the boxes of insulin were on that nightstand as well. Were they insulin pens? I believe so, yes. And I won't hold you to it. I'm not going to quiz you, but about how many insulin pens were there? 2. So with your belief of that, you're saying that it was just those 2 pens that caused Joe's death? No. Okay. Were there any other pens that y'all found? Not that I found specifically, or any other pens that you saw. When we were at the house, I saw where the insulin was kept in the fridge. Okay. So you only saw those pens in the fridge and then 2 other pens, correct? I believe so. Yes. Okay. Did she talk about moving his insulin pens? Yes. She said that she had collected a bunch of empty pens around the house and brought them and put in his nightstand, which kind of goes against her earlier statement saying that she's the one that keeps the house tidy and in place and everything. They didn't initiate a crime scene. They didn't preserve the crime scene. We don't know if those 2 pens were full or empty or anything about the other pens, whether they be on the nightstand or in the fridge. At the hospital, yes. Sarah refuses to allow the family to see Joe. However, they're all falsely accusing her of murder. How would any person feel falsely accused of such a heinous act? Irate, indignant. On top of that, Jeannie is calling Sarah the B word and telling her, quote, "You better keep walking." They were kicked out of the hospital. Now, we don't dispute that Joe died from hypoglycemia. I don't dispute that. But he also did have a heart attack. Remember, Ms. Vargas told you in closing just a second ago, the medical records are clear. They are clear. 16 from Dr. Kakashani. Could be due to hypoxia/hypoglycemia, cannot exclude a stroke. Page 179 of the medical records. Page 260 of the medical records. Clinical history, stroke follow-up. Page 263. What I highlighted there is very detailed, but I'm going to actually go a few sentences down to the non-highlighted. He has deteriorated. Prognosis is very poor, unlikely to improve beyond this. The reason for this presentation was stroke and hypoglycemia as well. So, it was never investigated when the heart attack took place and the effect it had on Joe's death. Sarah labeling this as a stroke continuously is a defensive mechanism for a false accusation of murder. After all, we do have an ME report that explains the manner of death is undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. That was signed off by the ME's boss, and it was peer reviewed. We see down there, this case was presented and reviewed at the weekly Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences Quality Assurance and Peer Review Conference on March 15th of 2023. Regarding Joe's heart, it is important to note that one coronary artery was blocked 90 to 95%. Another coronary artery was blocked 60 to 70%. And that's straight under atherosclerotic coronary artery disease. That's right from the ME report. Thus, she concluded that Joe had atherosclerotic coronary artery disease. It's right there. Dr. Inakawa, she explained to you that this is the type of heart attack that is caused by diabetes. Question, okay, and what is that called when that, is that a medical term for a stroke? That is ischemic stroke, infarctus stroke. When the block is, the blood vessel that feeds the brain with oxygen gets blocked because of the effect of high sugar. Okay, and what is that called again? Ischemic, okay, and I'm gonna mispronounce this, but what's the difference between that and atherosclerotic? It's the same thing. Atherosclerotic. In accordance with the ME report, Joe suffered from comorbidities that Dr. Inakawa, she described. Question, what sort of effects does type 1 diabetes have on a person after 26 years? It depends on too many factors. If it's controlled, not controlled, is there any other comorbidities, smoking, other habits? There's too many factors. But after that long of diabetes not controlled, I expect some complications like stroke, heart attack, blockages in the legs, high bleeding, something called neuropathy. All of this is what Joe suffered from. The conclusion from the ME report has to remain unchanged. Comment. The classification of cause and manner of death is, in any case, is based on a combination of autopsy findings and investigative information, including circumstances and history. In this case, the decedent, a 46-year-old white male, was found unresponsive in bed on January 7, 2023, was transported to Houston Methodist Baytown Hospital, was pronounced dead on January 15, 2023. After review of investigative information, including medical records and results of laboratory testing performed at Quest Diagnostic, described above, the cause of death is classified as complications of toxic effects of insulin. At the time of the writing of this report, the circumstances surrounding the death are unclear, particularly regarding the administration of the insulin to the decedent. In addition, the law enforcement investigation is still ongoing. Should additional information become available, the manner of death may be reevaluated and appropriately amended. Notice that the ME report leaves open the possibility of changing her opinion if, quote, should additional pertinent information become available. Ask yourself back there, what additional pertinent information did the state present to the ME? The answer again is none. Again, the only additional information is the extraneous acts, but that is the sleight of hand. They want you to focus over there instead of here, the indictment. Like you believe in magic, they believe in her guilt, but just like magic, it's not real. Nothing has changed. There is no evidence that Sarah administered insulin to Joe. The state cannot even tell you the manner and means. They can't. They're literally throwing the kitchen sink at the wall and hoping something sticks. Well, oh well, Sarah could have given him benzos and ropinirole and Benadryl. There's no evidence of that. Well, the hospital gave him benzos. Also, Joe could have taken benzos recreationally. There's no evidence that he did that, but there's no evidence that Sarah administered any of that. Moreover, Dr. Knight explained that ropinirole doesn't make you tired. There's no evidence of a struggle. None. Joe was much stronger than Sarah, a woman who had just had a surgery. It is on a cocktail of narcotics. I mean, sticking a needle in somebody, you're going to feel that and react. If Sarah's sticking a needle in him, how does he not react to that? If I throw a dead body right here, right now, you want to know who, when, why, how. All of that is inexplicable based upon the evidence we have. Every doctor here that testified was aware that people have died from hypoglycemia. Granted, they didn't say it was common, but never in the manner in which the state asserts that Joe died. In fact, Dr. Inakwa praised Dexcom for saving lives because people go to sleep, become hypoglycemic, and have a resulting severe medical issue or die. All of this means, from totally inconclusive evidence, it is more probable that Joe accidentally did this to himself. Joe had uncontrolled diabetes and severe medical issues and was prescribed a lot of insulin, which he hadn't been taking. And on top of that, he was taking medication which made him even more sensitive to the administration of insulin, that is the metformin. Dr. Inakwa told you that the amounts of insulin Joe had could make him hypoglycemic if he had been non-compliant, which he was, and a mere 80 units of Lantus would be irreversible. Also here, we are like Detective Rocks wanted and insured after only mere accusations from family members without evidence who hated Sarah with a predetermined investigation that was so lackluster that they didn't even preserve the scene or collect any evidence. Evidence was made up, literally in the middle of trial by them. This water drink, in the middle of trial, this comes up. Oh, well, Sarah told me that that there was something in water and it smelled foul, and she made Joe drink it. That came up in the middle of trial. The mix of pills, that's made up. A packed suitcase, that's totally made up. It wasn't in the police report. Do you not think it's a big deal if somebody has a packed suitcase and you don't put that in the police report? You don't take a picture of that? Sarah absolutely did not commit this crime. Here, there's still, as I told you at the beginning of this trial, Ms. Vargas confirmed it. Closing, there still is no evidence, literally none, that Sarah administered insulin. The record is replete with doubt. Render a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Ms. Vargas, your final argument.
Hey, Mom, it's me. I just called to let you know everything's fine. I went home, prepared to be shot, but it didn't happen. Anyway, I love you. I'll talk to you later. All right, bye.
That was days before she murdered him. Days. His family didn't make up this story in denial. That family was robbed of their sunshine. Or as the defendant described him, one of her horrible husbands. If I'm guilty of anything, it's picking horrible husbands. That's in those messages that she says to reporters. That's her own words to someone that's in this room. You don't get to leave her. She leaves you. You heard that. When Sarah met Joe, she moved quick. Spider meet the fly. The defendant tells anyone who will listen with her whole chest her motives for killing Joe. I'm amazed at all he was able to keep hidden, she says about Joe to journalist Mary Ellen Swishow. According to her, he was bleeding her dry. He was leaving her in financial ruin, like David Bragg, also dead. He was lying. He was stealing. He liked porn. He was a slob. He didn't take care of himself. He was sneaking around and buying stuff at the corner store. He was emotionally abusive. He refused to get it together with his diabetes. She didn't want to take care of an invalid. So instead of just leaving him, or better yet, letting him leave her, she did the most obvious and natural thing to her, and she murdered him. She is screaming her motive to anyone and everyone that will listen. She was tired of him. He was taking too much from her. And those are her words about her beloved husband. This is not a doting wife who lost the love of her life as she initially was acting. It's not the polished woman with the jewelry and the Bible. It's the expletive screaming, vindictive, manipulative, always planning, always calculating woman. It's the actress Sarah Hartsfield, the embittered woman that wasn't going to take his shit anymore. We talked about roles during voir dire, and now is the time when the rubber hits the road on your duties that you owe. It is your turn. It is your opportunity to right the wrong that's been done to Joseph Hartsfield. Evaluate not what I say, not what defense counsel says. Evaluate the evidence. Decide what you believe. And you took an oath to listen to the evidence presented to you and to make your decision based accordingly. And as stated in the jury charge, your sole job right now is to determine guilt or innocence of the indictment. That's it. I've tried some cases that are what you could be called he said, she says, and it's generally assaults. And juries can sometimes struggle with that because in those cases, they're having to figure out, was there even a crime? Did something happen here But we know something happened here. A man is no longer with us in his own home, killed by what can only be described as his worst nightmare. And the only person with him in that home is her. And the only way you can describe their relationship, if you read through the text messages, is that she had utter contempt for him. She knew he was trying to leave. She had a habit of doing real specific things whenever people tried to leave her. There were a lot of signs in this case. She waited as he lay dying for hours, almost an entire day, to call 911. She didn't want to ride in that ambulance. She was worried about her car. She didn't seem upset that he was dying. She seemed intent on punishing his family. She was obsessed with them. It's all she could talk about, that and forcing the stroke narrative, and then talking about how much of a pig and a piece of crap her beloved husband was. She copy and pasted nasty messages about his family and sent them out to anyone that would listen. And defense counsel told you in his opening statement, defendant gave Joe the insulin before he went to sleep. She wrote it too. They've already admitted to her handling the murder weapon repeatedly. Of course, she's not going to admit to doing it, but my God, how rare is it that we have this much evidence and the defendant literally admits to giving the murder weapon to the victim. Joe had benzos in his system when he got to the hospital, prior to the hospital administering them. I went through that in painstaking detail with Dr. Agogo. It's in the medical records. That was not given to him prior to him getting there. The defendant admitted to giving him ropinirole and Benadryl, which you heard testimony can cause you to go to sleep. It can make you drowsy. Joe, who wouldn't even take a Tylenol, had 3 medications in him. 3 medications in him, and all of them, you saw on the medical charts the defense counsel showed you, were prescribed to her. She had Valium, she had ropinirole, and she had Benadryl. And the defense counsel's own questions to Deputy Yateman phrased it perfectly. Narcotics like Valium can cause you to be very drowsy. They put you, and he said this, in a weakened state. Now, he was, of course, talking about helpless Sarah. But isn't that just what she did to Joe? Drug him, overdose him, wait for irreparable brain damage, wait till he's throwing up. Well, now he's thrown up, so that's kind of obvious. So now I have to pretend like I'm a caring wife, call 911. But first, Facebook. Remember what she warned the family in World War III? Pardon my language, but she said, you'll never fucking see him again. She might not be a woman of her word, but she is a woman of her threats. According to the defendant, he also didn't want to eat it, but she made him his favorite food. This is the food that she knew would shoot his blood sugar straight up, but she made it for him, and he didn't want to eat it. And she says he didn't want to eat it, and I forced him to eat it. Is that how she got him to take all that medicine that Joe Hartsfield wouldn't have taken on his own? Defense counsel wants you to think that Joe was so non-compliant that he regularly took his insulin after he ate and before he went to bed. But in Dr. Anakawa's records, the note that he took the medicine after meals was information provided by her. She tells law enforcement that this man is utterly incapable. She can't leave him alone for even a little bit. He is just that helpless. He just needs her so much. And yet, she leaves him for chunks at a time. She acted like there was no life insurance. Sure enough, there was, and she was acutely aware of it, and also that she was the beneficiary on it. She hated his children. She hated his family. She didn't want him to have any connection with them, but he did. He just couldn't help but exist and make her angry. The defendant told law enforcement at her home that she and Joe had together decided to cut his family out of his life. And you heard that message. That boy loved his mama. You think he was going to cut her out of his life for her? She said in her own words, she's a behavioral analyst in the military. She's an intelligence analyst in the military. Now, I don't know what she was because those are two different things. She's something. Defense truly cannot have her death, have Joseph's death related to low blood sugar, because in trying to cover her tracks, defendant repeatedly, consistently, obsessively said that it wasn't. So much so that she put it in his obituary. How many times are we reading an obituary of someone and we're curious what happened to him, but it's never in there, but it was in the one she wrote? That's why defense counsel has to try and confuse you with medical testimony when his neurologist and the medical examiner spoke unequivocally. He did not have a stroke that caused this. He had prolonged hypoglycemia that went untreated for too long because she sat there, she farted around, and she let it kill his brain. She caused it, and then she made sure it was irreversible. And sometimes that looks like a stroke, and you heard that very clearly. Sometimes it mimics a stroke. It looks like it, but that's not what she was dealing with. You have other signs. Her talking to her own daughter. This isn't a threat. How often do you feel like something's not a threat when someone precedes it with saying, this isn't a threat? What else does she say? As soon as I knew he was in trouble, I did everything I could to save him. Actions speak louder than words. Defendant said that to Ashley, but what a farce. She tells the hospital he didn't do drugs, and there's no indication of such. But then she accuses him of using cocaine and meth, and nowhere is it documented in hospital records of that. But she says, oh, the hospital told me his heart looked like a drug user. Maybe that's why all this was going on. She wasn't concerned about helping her husband dying. She was concerned about orchestrating her defense. That video cameras don't work, but then suddenly, wait, I do have this image where his face looks kind of off, so I'm going to go ahead and send that to try to convince the medical examiner to find something that is not supported by medical diagnoses and science. Defendant said, oh crap, when asked for her phone. She didn't want to give it up. She didn't want to turn it over. And now we know why, right? Because that's where some of the most damning evidence comes from. She's allegedly asleep. We know he's in the bed dying. And somehow, unconscious Joe, who's been laying there for hours, his phone sends this to the defendant, which she immediately saves to her phone, the new bank account, and his driver's license. It's almost like she knew he was going to die, right? The Apple legacy account. She knew he was going to die because she made sure of it. How can she possibly feign ignorance after this? the Facebook messages with flat out lies about his blood sugar. Oh, he's been low lately. When his doctor and the data shows exactly the contrary. She deleted the text messages that she sent to her daughter when she was supposed to be asleep an hour and a half before she calls 911. And you know her butt is in the room with him because she's videoing him probably gasping for his last waking breaths. But first, Facebook, let me go tell Carlene I'm gonna call 911. Thank God she did, I guess. Defendant tells a journalist there's no smoking gun in jail messages, but isn't every single one of her acts a smoking gun? When law enforcement went back into the house with an arrest warrant, she had a suitcase packed. And while defense would quibble with the integrity and credibility of Detective Rocks, she said it's in the body camera. You could watch the body camera. But because it wasn't in her report, don't focus on it. She says he's the perfect husband. We have a good marriage. We weren't worried about divorce. And then all of a sudden, when the evidence is mounting, he is an abusive, drug-addicted, porn-loving, slobby piece of crap. And he's a thief whose family was the root of all evil. His family was worried, and they had every right to be. What a wild... I didn't have time to summarize all the evidence to you. There's not enough time in the day for me to go through it. But what a wild coincidence that no person can leave her without violent consequences. What a wild coincidence that as he is fighting for his life, she is setting this up. What a wild coincidence that she is setting up an alibi, a defense over Facebook while he was dying. While he was laying there and she was ordering groceries, bringing him inside, putting him on the table, recording him. As he laid dying, she laid planning. As investigators build the case, how coincidental that she packs a suitcase. And the irony, or tragedy rather, is that she wasn't happy either. And if she had just let him leave, none of us would be here today. She could have just let him go, but the spider doesn't let go of the fly. She's always working. We've laid out our cards. I'm not trying to hide things from you. I am trying to move things more quickly. I'm not trying to put on our witnesses in the best light. There are issues that we've had to address. And I can Monday morning quarterback, I can armchair quarterback all day on any given case, things I wish that law enforcement can do. But it doesn't change the reality of this case. She admitted to handling the evidence, and she handled the evidence in front of the officers. And the cup, I can't say honestly that I care about, because what would that show you? She told them there was no video, but now we're mad at the officers for believing her. Defendant's actions, unfortunately, did impact law enforcement's decisions. And I wish that I could go back and I could have them collect those things, if for no other reason than to foreclose asinine arguments like that. But I'm not going to hide behind the fact that I do wish that they had gotten that evidence. But it doesn't change the medical examiner's testimony. It doesn't change her messages. It doesn't change her actions. You heard from the medical examiner. It is not their duty to determine how someone was injected with so much insulin to the point that they overdose. That is y'all's job. That is why that blank is left open. The medical examiner told you it would take something drastic, like a video of how the insulin was administered, for them to be able to do that. But it doesn't take that for y'all. You said out there it doesn't take that for y'all. At the very beginning of trial in voir dire, I showed you that picture. And we talked about the puzzle. And you all agreed that you do not look at evidence in a vacuum. You got it then, like you get it now. And the evidence is clear. And sometimes I have to rely on just one person's testimony. But that's not the case here. I'm not relying on a witness. I'm relying on y'all to have listened, to have paid attention. You heard from Detective Rocks. This case had more evidence tying the defendant to committing the offense than any she's ever had before. You heard who did it, Sarah. You heard where it happened, Chambers County. You heard when it happened. You can see when she did it. You know what happened. There were signs. Defense counsel said in their opening that Detective Rocks arrested the defendant immediately, but you know that's not true. She wasn't just some detective on a power trip doing a quick investigation. Detective Rocks did an incredibly thorough investigation. And while there is always room for improvement, I have no doubt how many people are going to tell me how much better I could have done on this. But that woman was on her first call out as a detective. And she did, from my perspective, an incredible job balancing the rights of the defendant, a thorough investigation, and the safety of our community, keeping an eye towards justice. To drag her and to make this investigation worthless because she didn't get something that would have already had evidence on it, it's just another misdirection. Focus on the whole, not the whole picture. And I'm always cautious in opening because I want you to have a roadmap, but I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I never know if a witness is going to become unavailable or just not cooperative. I don't know if they're going to remember everything or something else. It's always something in trial, and you saw that happen in the course of this trial. But I don't want my overpromises to you to mean that a killer goes free. But defense counsel sure did oversell. And they authoritatively told you that he died of something other than what he died of. Dr. Bainan, the medical examiner, was clear. She held his brain in her hand, and she knows what killed him. And she knows, and she told you that he did not have a stroke. I don't know what else you want. Defense counsel wants you to hold it against Joe's sister that she let the police know what she thought, and wants to argue with a grieving family member about the word accusation. But isn't it a little ridiculous to not expect your sister to fight like hell if they think that you're murdered? We could probably get a lot of college credit hours from the medical testimony that we heard. And all of it paints a really clear picture, even with some of the missing links the defense counsel wants you to focus on. She murdered him. And to theorize that this man, who was so terrified of low blood sugar that he DKA'd multiple times and would not comply for fear of being low, all of a sudden, when he was trying to leave the defendant, when he was scared of dying in his sleep, all of a sudden, he takes a bunch of drowsy-inducing medicine, overdoses himself on insulin, doesn't realize it, doesn't correct it, doesn't apparently respond to any of the things that defendant alleges that she did for him, apparently was mobile during the period when doctors said he wouldn't have been able to move around. It's just not reasonable. It's just not reasonable. It's an insult to your intelligence. The alerts went off over 100 times. She said she heard them. She had the alerts on her phone. So why would she say all that? Why would she tell on herself about the medicine? Because she knows reasonably that she's going to get looked at. And she's not dumb. She's actually quite smart. She does what I kind of do when I know that I've got some bad facts coming down the pike, and I address them. So what she did is weave them in. She tells one person one thing. She tells Aunt Nancy, well, I'll try to give him water, and he said it tasted weird, just in case he wakes up. She tells law enforcement, well, I gave him I gave him his restless leg syndrome medicine and Benadryl. It wasn't his, it was hers. She weaves it in. So if she's caught, she says, well, I said it. I told him. I know as well as you do that what she did was intentional. What she did was knowing. What she did was unapologetic. The pieces that they try to put into the puzzle do not make sense. Defense counsel wants you to focus on the fact that he didn't eat right and he ran high, but he didn't die of running high. The defense counsel wants you to focus on the fact that Joe's family was concerned, and rightfully so. Defense counsel wants you to focus on the fact that they were pissed off, but not on why. Not on the fact that defendant walks by and incites the family. The family that knew that he was getting isolated. They almost got him out. Y'all, they almost got him out. But it's a problem whenever Jeannie is venting to her family. Defense counsel wants you to think that Sarah was high as a kite, incapable of doing such. And also, don't hold it against her too much that she didn't help him and that she let him lay there helpless for 20 hours because she was high and she was in a weakened state. But you saw her. She drove herself to the hospital. Couldn't even be bothered to ride in there with him. She's on Facebook. She was ordering groceries, making sure the groceries are on the table. She said, hold on a minute, Carlene, I gotta call 911. Then she tells reporters, I didn't ignore his Dexcom alerts. I was on my own pain regimen in another room. I was sleeping most of the day and night. What story is it, Sarah? I'm sorry that it's taken a long time to go through this, but when someone tells that many dang different stories to that many people, there's so many things that you don't get to know about even. Defense counsel wants you to focus on things that aren't part of the jury charge. Defense counsel wants you to focus on, in 15-minute conversations with detectives, a person doesn't say every single thing that they think of. She's supposed to be a pharmacy tech that was so involved with his medical care that she would call his work to tell him to get a shot. She would call his doctor to correct him in his medical records. But then she pretends like she doesn't even know what kind of insulin he has, what they do. Defense counsel wants you to focus on the fact that AUSA's rejected a solid case about David George and the defendant's murder plot. And they want you to focus on Douglas County prosecutors originally coming up with a reason for not prosecuting when there was conflicting evidence on David Bragg, but not on the fact that they reopened it. Defense counsel wants you to focus on the fact that law enforcement failed Titus Controlled, but not that she was seen fleeing the scene. Defense counsel wants you to focus on an easy way out investigation, but not that the defendant left Brian Altus's home minutes before it caught on fire. Minutes after he rejects her. Defense counsel wants you to focus on wrongful convictions because that is terrifying. That's terrifying for me. That is horrifying. But they don't want you to focus on common sense. They don't want you to focus on the evidence. They don't want you to focus on probability. Defense counsel wanted you to focus on the burden, and I do too. My burden is a reasonable doubt. Defense counsel wants you to focus on duty of care or omission, but not on criminal responsibility. A person is criminally responsible if they cause the result. Defense counsel wants you to focus on elements that aren't there. You heard him add that, right? I can't prove my case to you if we don't know exactly how she got the insulin. That is not the law, ladies and gentlemen. But you aren't falling for that. That nagging feeling is not reasonable doubt if it's not reasonable. Defendant isn't charged with failure to render aid. Defendant is charged with murder. How much of defendant's clothes did he spend on the elements that he think we should have to prove? We spent 2 days on medical testimony, and we flew through extraneous offense testimony. Defense counsel has spent time with the experts on wild goose chases, like the sound of an alarm when the defendant's own words to multiple people are that she heard the alarms. What was the point of that? It is a distraction. Defense counsel wants you to think stroke and even continually tried to put that in the mouth of the neurologist. He wants you to focus on A1C, atherosclerosis, all of these things instead of the glaring issue that she overdosed him on insulin. Defense counsel said that the self-defense with regard to David Bragg was ironclad. When the detective told you it happened, it was reopened by the attorney. Defense counsel says there's no evidence in this case and doesn't want you to look over here. Defense counsel says that Detective Rocks rushed an investigation and pursued it only on the basis of the family ignoring that even in the medical charts, the doctors were concerned there was foul play. Who the heck else is administering the insulin other than her? "20 hours. That's how long he laid there, but they don't want you to focus on that because that makes what she did real obvious. So instead, he's got to create these false gotcha moments with witnesses about testimony that either isn't their subject matter or it's just a distraction to focus from the literal mountains of evidence in the case. But that is what skilled defense attorneys do, and he is top notch. They try to take holes and tell you that it's doubt. They try to take information that we'll never get to know because murderers aren't in the business of telling us how they do it, and they try to wedge into it and say, you can't convict because you don't know this. That is not the elements of the offense, but it is effective. It is scary, but don't fall for it. The reality is what they're complaining about doesn't even push the needle either way. It wouldn't have proven her innocent. Would it have proven her guilty? No, you saw her handling them in the video. She admitted to touching them. He said it in his opening. She couldn't have had better representation than him, but the spider just can't help itself. She's got to spin her webs. And every time she talks, it something different. And it's just not believable. And we're never going to get the whole picture because she took that from us when she let him suffer from irreversible brain damage. What you have are the witnesses that were available to prosecution this week. What you have is the mounds of evidence that really she created. You'll never have the whole picture. But trying to make sense of a crime isn't like that. There is no reasonable doubt. If I tell you 2 plus blank equals 4, you know what that blank is. And some of you might be thinking, it could be 2 or it could be 1 plus 1. But either way, you know what's in that blank, right? It's 2, one way or another. She doesn't get away with this because she was like kind of careful. Her story, the information presented to you, her story is exactly like what Hannah Williamson, her former best friend, felt about one of the other stories. It's ludicrous. How stupid does she think you are? Page 1 of the medical records, hypoglycemic coma. Page 13, hypoglycemic coma. Page 27, hypoglycemic coma. Pages 128, 129, 132, 133, 150, 159. Did you notice when we were going through all this medical testimony, he didn't grill the neurologist the stroke questions. He grilled the ER doctor that. Did you notice that he asked Dr. Knight, the general practitioner, the diabetes questions, and he stood a little bit back on that from Dr. Inaqua. Notice how he grilled the cop about diabetes, but not the doctor treating Joe for it. Defense counsel knows who's been subpoenaed. They get that information, but what did they spend their time on and who did they spend it with? Joe didn't have a DNR in place. And after intentionally introducing the amount of insulin into that man who was deathly afraid of insulin, so much so that she caused an overdose, his worst fears come to life. She takes it one step further and makes sure he's got a DNR. Even in recalling Dr. Inaqua, who testified that someone would have had to introduce that much insulin to his body, and it wouldn't be Joe. Defense tells you that there's no evidence. This is about possibility versus reasonableness. The trial is the state of Texas versus Sarah Hartsfield, but it's really bigger than that, isn't it? This is about what is okay in Chambers County. You may get away with devious, ingenious, devastating crimes like this in another county. You can really, really be skillful, premeditated, deliberate, and convincing in another state. And they may not have the investigators willing to spend countless hours in the trenches, or juries who demand to hold people accountable. But here, U12 can draw a hard line. In other places, people may get away with committing murder right in front of people's faces, but you don't have to do that here. There is no reasonable doubt. You know what happened in that video. You know what happened in that video, and you know what happened here. The only reasonable conclusion is that this person committed that crime, and it's your job to convict her, and it doesn't bring me joy to do that. I have no doubt that she has suffered in her life, but that doesn't absolve her of taking that man's life in the exact way that he was most fearful of. And defense counsel made very valid arguments about not trusting the government in voir dire, but you don't have to trust the government. You don't have to trust me to see that this is a crime. You just have to trust your own eyes, your ears, your gut, your instincts, your judgment. Sometimes it really is the most obvious answer. And when I showed you these elements, every single one of you said that you did not have a problem with this. And that's the case. We'll never get to know how she did it because she orchestrated this whole thing. Joe had medications in his system by her own admission and by medical testimony and records that weren't prescribed to him when he wouldn't even take Tylenol. In voir dire, I asked you this question. There's only 2 people that could have administered this much insulin to him. There's absolutely no evidence that Joe did this to himself. And there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that the defendant did this intentionally and knowingly. And when I asked you this question, none of you raised your hand to say you weren't a 10. And if you don't hold her accountable, this is not going to stop. And I'm just going to tell you, if it's between my loved one or yours, I know who I hope it is. Here is me standing before you with more evidence than I have in an overwhelming amount of cases. And this is your opportunity to take these cases seriously. Y'all are the heartbeat of the community. And you can decide to take it seriously or to wash your hands of the victim and say something probably happened, but I'm not 100% sure, when you know darn good and well that is not the burden. Put yourself in his family's shoes. What would justice be for the woman who did this to him and then watched him? She recorded his breathing and made fun of it. And I hope that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. When I was a senior in high school, my stepdad was diagnosed with ALS, and that's Lou Gehrig's disease. And he survived for 5 years, and he was a heck of a fighter. And he went through more with that than, from my perspective, any mere mortal could. And in his last days in the hospital, he had bilateral pneumonia. At that point, he couldn't walk. He couldn't talk. He couldn't eat on his own. It's a terrible way to die. It really is. And he made the decision that he didn't want to be intubated. And we knew that that was the end. And the last moments of my dad's life, I'll never forget. They took everything off of him. And they had given him medicine so that he could go to sleep. And we were in the room, and I got to hold his hand. And a nurse sang him. It was like it's surreal. I can still feel myself being back in that room. And I knew that my dad was dying. I knew that he couldn't breathe. And it was terrible, and it was painful, and it was one of the worst days of my life. But in that, it was also peaceful, and it was beautiful because he had made that decision, and we got to be there with him. And he was living on his own terms, and he was dying on his own terms. And this case has, if I'm being honest, really sucked for me because she robbed Joe not just of his life, she robbed him of his death. And she robbed his family of that peace and of that goodbye. And for what? For what? Like, what was the point of her doing this? You've heard it from defense since voir dire. It's not her fault. He had these other health issues. And as great of an attorney as Mr. Darwin is, and he is, it's plain as day. It wasn't ever about her duty to save him. It was about her duty not to cause his death, not to cause him needing to be saved. This is not a doctor missing golf to not help a stranger. This is a lying and murderous wife who drugged her husband, overdosed him on insulin, and then just sat there and ordered groceries and complained about him while he was laying there dying in the way that he was most terrified of. And my job requires me to walk among monsters, and my faith calls me to fear no evil. But as a resident of this community, the idea that she can get up and walk out of here with the rest of us terrifies me, and I hope it terrifies you. Because there is no question if she will hurt another person. It is when, and it is who. And defense counsel asked you in voir dire, how do you want to feel when you leave this courthouse? And I hope your answer is the same as mine, to see that justice is done. And it would be a grave injustice. What a triumph of bad to acquit the woman who did this to Joseph Hartsfield in such a terrible and calculating way. She is not Richard Jewell. She is not the hero that they brought up in voir dire. She is who we have to be protected from. She is not a kind and loving person. She is not this person who's been wrongfully accused. She is, unfortunately, for all of us, a murderer. Now, I asked you that question in voir dire. What does a murderer look like? And now you know, because she's sitting right there. And it's your job to find her guilty and hold her accountable. Thank you.
But dang, that was a mouthful. I don't know. She overdid it for me. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but man. I mean, I guess since we were not like in the case, let me put this up here. Wait a minute. I guess since we didn't actually get to see the case, and if y'all need any updates or anything, I did try to recap and keep us up to date with the things that were going on in this trial. I guess this is my thing, because it's hard for them to prove in some ways that she overdosed him. I don't know. I mean, because they can't put the needle in her hand. I don't know. I feel like they convicting her on her past. Me personally. I mean, she a horrible person, so I'm okay with her going away. But I definitely feel like they are convicting her more on her past, and that's why these closing statements are the way they are. I mean, it's not even all about the evidence. It's just about her past. They brought in everybody. Even her brother got on the stand, guys, and said that she burnt down the grandma's house because she was mad because she didn't inherit it. We had old classmates that got on the stand. Like, you couldn't even imagine. They brought up people from 20 years ago. So, yeah, I'm like, normally in cases when we watching trials, we do not see this type of evidence come in. It is not this we bringing up your friend from when you were 15 years old so they can. It was a lot of character evidence, right? Like I said, the one none of these past things that I'm speaking about is anything that she has been convicted of. Let's get that straight. So she hasn't been convicted of any of this stuff. but they were able to tell the jury about all of this stuff. And I'm like, just based off of her being a horrible, horrible, horrible person, they gonna convict her. Like, I don't think she stood a chance, because it's hard to kind of like separate yourself from that evidence. And that's why most times when we are in trials, they do not bring up that evidence. They don't let that stuff come in, because it seems like favoritism, right? Or yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Morel, yeah, when you, like I said, it speaks to it, but she hasn't been convicted of none of that stuff. It's just, far as I'm concerned, in my mind, when I'm thinking about it, he says, she says stuff. The ex-husband got on the stand and said, we saw her running away. We didn't press charges in regards. That's he says, she says stuff in my mind. Like, you have no evidence. Like, she has not been convicted, and they decided that when she claimed self-defense against the last husband, they decided that that was not a crime. Wait a minute, 1 second. I got my patio door open. Let me close it. That way y'all can hear me versus to the train. I think they had it out bad for her therapist. At least that's what I think. Yeah, OnlyFans Natalie did not. That it's a Natalie case, but Natalie was a lot different. Like, they had evidence. Like, this man didn't even have that stuff. But I just really yeah, they really, really wanted to convict her on something. And because all of these other actions in her life, like even with all the kids getting up there and saying how horrible their mom was, well, we have horrible people out here. They do horrible things. We have horrible parents, but that doesn't mean that you stuck the needle in his thing and then his arm, And then with that being said, that even when they were investigating this, it was a lot of evidence, like as far as the insulin needles, things of that nature. And I just know that. Yeah. The only difference is that, yeah, I don't know. I feel I'm okay. I don't want y'all to think like I think she's some saint out here. I just don't know if they convicted her on the right stuff. That's just my personal thing. I just don't know if they convicted her on the right stuff, the right case. But they got her. That's what they wanted to do, regardless of the fact. So let me show y'all I will show y'all the verdict. Only because I don't know why they did this like this. Like, Texas they have cases, but I'm pretty sure right here where this case is being held at in Chambers County, like, they ain't got that much going on. And they,
On behalf of this,
get some attention, some media attention there, and they can't even handle it and stream the case. I just really didn't understand that. That part I just really didn't. I don't understand why they did that like that. Yeah, and then the only part that they let us in for is this part. So wait a minute. This is
Any defense attorney that I've ever encountered could have given her a better defense.
Oh gosh. So they live now. Now they want to be on camera and stuff and talking to us and stuff. Man, bye. But I'm gonna let y'all see it since I'm out here and they live. I don't know why they couldn't have the cameras in the courtroom. It was such a pisser. Oh, did I? I don't know. I'm trying to find it. I can't even find it. Let me see. I know they live now. They got a lot of nerve to be live now. Let me go back to channel 2. Yeah, they didn't even do the post conference afterwards. It seemed like they're doing it now. Okay, so I'm gonna share this so that way we can have this part so y'all can all see it and we can watch it together. I didn't see the actual verdict, so I didn't watch any of this. I just kind of seen it come through my timeline yesterday. I don't know how long they were deliberating. I'm assuming that it was not long. So let's see.
Four-person. Mr. Dawson, are you the four-person? Has the jury reached the verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Chad? Thank you. Mrs. Hartsfield, if you would stand at this time. Ms. Henry, if you would read the verdict, please.
In cause number 23-DCR-0063, the state of Texas versus Sarah Hartsfield, we, the jury, find the defendant, Sarah Hartsfield, guilty of the offense of murder as alleged in the indictment.
All right, you can have a seat. Does anyone want me to poll the jury?
No, Your Honor.
No.
All right. We're going to move to the second phase of this trial. It's much like the first phase, but won't take near as much time generally. You'll go back in the jury room, give them a couple of minutes. We'll come back in. You'll hear opening statements by the state, by the defense. You'll hear witnesses from the state or the defense. And then you'll be given another charge. It'll be read to you, and we'll go through the same procedure as this first phase. So if you would go back into your room, but we'll call you out very shortly.
All rise for the jury, please.
Okay, so that's that part, and it looks like they have a sentencing phase. But remember, guys, like I don't know why they did this trial like that. Let me go see if I can find the sentencing. I guess they had a trial for the sentencing part. They didn't even poll the jury. They didn't even poll the jury. They so over it. Okay. I don't even know if they showing it. Because I see they're talking about opening statements and closing statements and for that part. I don't know if they did. I don't know. Chambers County need to get it better together. Like, they do not have that many high profile cases. So when you get one, you got to kind of like do what you need to do. Yeah, so I don't even know what she got sentenced to. Yeah, I'm not even sure what she got sentenced to, but let's see if they provide this information in their live press conference. They are currently live right now. So I will share that, and let's see if we can find out, because I can't, I'm not really good with piecing stuff together. That's the first thing that y'all will find out about me, is that piecing stuff together does not work for me. I need it all to be in one place. But here we go.
lawyers conferred with the judge. To the jury, you got it right, and you should be proud of your hard work. Judge Kane, for running a professional courtroom, thank you, and always being fair to both sides. There are so many who deserve credit for this conviction, for their participation, for coming forward with information, that I cannot thank everyone. But it did begin with Houston Methodist Baytown doctors and nurses, knowing that there was foul play from the beginning. The Chambers County Sheriff's Office, under the leadership of Brian Hawthorne, and the patrolman on duty, Yateman, who also saw something was not right. And CCSO Detective Skylar Rocks, who knew in her gut that this was intentional and never took no for an answer, persevered, took hold of this case with dogged determination, and worked closely with my office to make sure that we got it right. To the Hartsfield family, thank you for your patience. We are all deeply affected by your loss, and Joseph deserved better, as did the countless other victims in the wake of Sarah Hartsfield's reign of terror for the entirety of her life. To the law enforcement and prosecutors in other jurisdictions, I hope now that we have done all the work for you, you will seek justice for the many other victims of this psychopath. And just because she has been convicted here does not assuage your sworn duty to do your job in seeking justice in your jurisdictions. To the Donahue children, I applaud your courage and grieve your childhood that you were robbed of at the literal hands of your own mother. Heather Donahue, you are lucky to be alive. No thanks to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Phoenix, who refused to prosecute the murder for hire plot against you. Maybe they will move forward now that we have wrapped up their case for them in a tidy bow. And finally, Mallory Vargas.
Wait a minute. Is she taking shots at other legal systems? Is that what I'm hearing from her? Maybe they'll do it now that they didn't wrap it up in a tiny bow. Like, the nerve. No, she didn't. No, OnlyFans, she did not have a pending case. What happened with it was something where she was accused of everything is just out. He say, she say so far. No, I don't think it's not a pending case. What she's saying is that now that they didn't wrap it up in a pretty bow and she didn't got convicted of this case, that automatically means that she's guilty of what they quote unquote said that she may have done far as an M for hire. It's so bizarre because what they're trying to say is that she convinced her ex to unalive her first husband's wife. So she's saying that, hey, people in Arizona, y'all didn't prosecute it. Y'all didn't go forward with any of the charges. Well, now, since we have got our conviction here, we going to take shots at y'all. Maybe, just maybe, y'all reopen y'all investigation and do a little bit more digging, since now we done put all the pieces together, because here in Chambers, this is what we do, and this is how we do it. And for you guys in Minnesota who thought that it was self-defense, I'm glad that y'all have reopened y'all claim, because no, she is a psychopath and it was not self-defense. I'm okay with them looking for everything or doing everything, but my question is like, how you on here taking shots against another agency or legal? Like, y'all all supposed to be like, You supposed to do that behind closed doors. Like maybe you found some stuff that they didn't find. Sometimes they don't completely investigate some things. But wow, really? That's what we doing? Yeah, now that we wrap this up with a little bow, like they run around here doing some favors. Boo, boo, boo. I boo them for doing that. I don't like her already. Okay, I'm gonna let y'all finish listening to her because first of all, y'all didn't let us into the courtroom, and then you got the nerve to get up here and start taking shots against any justice system. Why can't it be that we work together and we found some more information? Maybe. How dare them?
You are a force to be reckoned with. You have a heart of gold, a heart for victims of crime, and a passion for what is right. This case was no less a mountain to be conquered, and you've climbed that mountain and reached the peak and planted the flag of justice. I'm going to turn over the questions to Mallory Vargas. She was the leader in this, and she deserves all the credit for this success. And y'all can direct your questions to her if you.
Another thing that I'm gonna be like real like about. You know, it would be interesting to me to find out what the jurors think. Like, if the jurors really convicted her because of this, or if they convicted her because of her past. And then I want the judge to come talk to me. And I want the judge to explain to me, why did he allow all this evidence in? Because it wasn't really like, and I understand she may have a pattern, but that is so, in my mind, sometimes it's so messed up because certain fact that what if she really didn't do this? She could have did all the other things. Okay. I'm gonna get off of it. Okay, I'm gonna put us back in there. All right, because we got other stuff to do. But how dare them not let us in the courtroom, give us these little tidbits, and then got the nerve to get up here talking about this mess. Okay. All right. I'm hot today with this one.
Mallory, based on all of the extra things that came up during this, I mean, what do you think? Why do you think Sarah Hartsfield was never stopped before this and arrested or prosecuted?
I can't speak to other jurisdictions. I mean, we see where there are sometimes agencies that it's easier to pass things off than investigate difficult offenses. And she's certainly skilled. She's really good at talking her way out of things. You heard that in the testimony. And it takes a lot of time. I can't thank my boss. I can't thank the DA enough for her allowing me to pour my time into this. And that's not something that everyone has the resources or the ability to do. But I mean, I feel like we were able to prove extraneous offenses in our own case. So it's there, it's possible.
What do you make of her demeanor in the courtroom throughout the trial?
I think it showed who she was. When she would come in, initially, she appeared poised. She was very performative. I don't know if people noticed, but she carried the Bible, but then she would leave it. She would forget it. She didn't bring it back to the jail with her. She wore what looked like a wedding ring on her finger. But as people began to speak the truth about her, the facade wore off. She glared at witnesses. She indicated that her children were liars. She would glare at me when I was at the bench or whenever I was at a witness stand. And I think it just was a matter of time before it wore off.
How do you feel that the jury decided to give her life in prison?
I'm grateful. I wouldn't have asked for it if I didn't think it was warranted. I genuinely feel sorrowful for her. Mm-hmm. I genuinely believe that she was a victim of sexual abuse, but that doesn't excuse her or absolve her of any of the horrible things that she's done to people. And I'm grateful that Chambers County decided to hold her accountable and protect everyone else.
What do you make of the speed of the jury's verdict and then also the punishment?
You're here. It was a wealth of information. And I think that the speed at which they decided her guilt was a message to the community. It was a message to the other jurisdictions even, that they saw through all of it. And I think defense did an excellent job. I don't think that any defense attorney that I've ever encountered could have given her a better defense than Mr. Darwin. But there was just an overwhelming amount of evidence. And then I think whenever they heard the sorrow of Helen compared with the trauma of the children, it was just clear that it was a safety issue, the sentence.
And you talked about the overwhelming amount of evidence a lot. Was there a key piece of evidence that you think sealed the deal for the jury on this?
I think there were two things that broke my heart the most, and I don't know if it resonated with the jury. I haven't spoken with them, but I could see their faces a little bit. One of those was the Apple legacy, and I think I had never heard of that. I was stunned at that. And the grocery shopping, like, wow, the grocery shopping, and I really struggled with this. Like, while he was like dying, she was ordering groceries, and we had talked amongst ourselves. ADA Sarah Porterfield even brought up, like, what was she gonna make? Like, what was the point of the grocery? It was a table full of groceries, and it was just evident that she didn't care about his life or his death. And I think that was clear in the messages that they read between her and a lot of people. Like the Facebook message before calling 911 to Carlene, there were a lot, but just her own actions, her own words in those moments where maybe he could have been saved.
With insulin as the tool, how did the preparation process look different? Insulin's an unusual method. Preparation look different for y'all versus others?
Yes. This whole case was different than anything I've ever worked.
Yes.
I've never seen someone with this much, like, she's very intelligent, but she also made a lot of mistakes. And it was her own mouth, like her own words, that alerted everyone to the fact that she so obviously was the killer. I mean, insulin it would have been great had it not been Joe, right? Like, that he didn't have this actual fear of insulin, this documented fear of being low, where his own doctors are like, he wouldn't do this to himself. He's scared of it. And then the fact that he had this overwhelming amount of insulin in his system, it just, I mean, it's different, but it wasn't at the same time. It was different in that there was just so much evidence.
Have you talked to the family since the sentencing, how they felt getting justice for Joseph?
Yeah, I think I have talked to the family, and it's like we're family now, and that kind of happens in these kind of cases. I know that there's, I don't want to speak for them. It feels like there's a sense of finality, but Cheryl's talked to them about a grief, like a second-hand grief that can come after this, that happens in conclusions like this.
How do you, I guess, get to the point of saying to the jury, like, hey, we want life for this? What goes into that decision?
I think I said this in my close. It's not comfortable for me. It makes me feel very heavy. But there are just certain people that have proven themselves to be too dangerous to be with the rest of us. And if not her, who? I mean, her own kids weren't safe in the home. And as a mother, even having undergone trauma myself, like, I can't imagine the ability to inflict that so consistently upon everyone, including the people you're literally biologically supposed to protect.
How unusual was it to have the family of the defendant actually sitting with the family of the victim?
I've never seen it.
No.
I've never seen it
Either.
There was some indication at the end, it sounds like, that she wants to appeal now.
That's standard. I expect that in every case with a large sentence. I've never not seen it in a murder. I've never not seen it in a case with a large sentence. So that's pretty standard. We expect that in pretty much every case like this.
And this may be a question for the sheriff's office, but how soon now will she go to TDCJ?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
If she's been a problem in the jail, they'll put her on the fast track, and she's had some issues in the jail, so they generally put her on the fast track if you're a problem.
I do want to take a moment to thank the team specifically. I couldn't have done this without them. I couldn't have done this without the unwavering and incredible support of Cheryl Leak Henry. She's a giant in the courtroom. I am blessed beyond measure to be able to learn under her and from her and through her. And I'm so grateful for all of her faith in me. But I'm also equally grateful for this team. It's a lot of hours. Like, I think I was working like 18 to 20 hours a day during the last couple of weeks. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without Shaquita Jones, Sarah Porterfield, Eric Carcerano. We have a new attorney, Allison Kling.
We haven't even had time to swear her in yet. She just got her bar results this week, and we haven't even sworn her in yet. We've been too busy. So that's going to be first thing.
Congrats.
Big celebration. I have 3 kids of my own, and my mom, Robin Edmonds, just stepped in for me in that role so that I could do this. And my kids, Vincent, Max, and Ezra, who unfortunately, and those of us that are parents know they have to carry this weight with us. Yep. And it's hard as a mom to miss out on things. But I'm so grateful for their grace. And I'm so grateful for my husband, my partner, Ernesto Vargas, who has pushed me and empowered me to be able to do, to be able to work like this. The families, they're my family now. Those girls, Ryan, the Hartsfields, the Knernscholds, they're just so many people that have been so impacted and have lived with the fear of speaking out. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful that they came forward. Our investigators, Brad Crone, Nick Gonzalez, Tommy Henry, Skylar rocks though. She took the beating of a lifetime on the stand, but another murder would have gone free. A serial killer would have gone free if Skylar did not work. Like, I've never seen a case worked. And I know there are going to be people who tell me how much better I could have done in the courtroom. Just like, you know, there are people that.
Wait a minute. So wait a minute, Jason. I want to make sure we got this right, because I know OnlyFans is trying to figure out which one. So we got 2. Okay, so is this one right here, Jason? This the one that for the candlelight dinner? Just so OnlyFans can know which one. My face is my just listening to her. I mean, and I understand that she was deeply invested. I just hated the way they did this, and I couldn't see it. Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was the one that had to be newly introduced. This one, she looked like she hasn't even got her license or something yet. Yeah, I just wish that they would have done this where, you know, everybody could see it. I would love to hear what the jurors, you know, because we didn't get to see everything. We just got to see bits and pieces and things of this trial, what information I was able to gather up for us in regards to it. I just wish they would have let us in there, right? I don't know why they didn't. I think maybe because I'm mad about that. I think that's what I'm mad about. That's where you get my little green faces from. Okay, well, I am going to let this continue to play. And then now they want to talk to us. And like, I wanted them to talk before. Like, I wanted to see this.
And I know there are going to be people who tell me how much better I could have done in the courtroom. Just like, you know, there are people that are telling her, like, why the heck didn't you get the pins? But first call out as a detective. Unbelievably well worked case, and I'm just so grateful because she caught a serial killer and she made us all safer. She made the whole county safer.
Yeah.
And I also need to thank our support staff and everyone else at the office, Leslie Childress, Ashley Yulke, and Logan Silcox, including everyone else at the office who held down the fort, because this is a whole hands-on deck effort, and everyone poured into this to get justice for a lot of people. Thank you.
Okay, thank y'all.
Oh, that's it. I wonder, is the defense? I want to hear. They must have just did the sentencing this morning. Okay. Is the defense gonna talk? Yeah, that's his mom right there. Oh God, be the cameraman in here, and this is what we get. Get it together. They don't know how to do nothing down there, down here in Chambers, right? Look at this mess. What is this? Man, somebody fired a cameraman. Oh, we got to put that on cars and stuff. Okay. Assuming the defense is not going to be talking, the cameraman is looking at the cars. They do not know how to broadcast a trial. I don't know. She was a serial one. I don't know. I can't call it. I can call it that she was trying to be. No, I don't know. I stand corrected on that one. I don't know. I'm gonna leave that alone. Okay, so we know we got, of course, I did this perfect. I think I did this perfectly. The whole point of this exercise this morning was in order for us to gain some TiVo time and be okay with our time that we have coming up in our other trial that we're currently watching in Florida. Well, Florida, they let us see it all. They let us see the court records. They are very transparent. And they say, hey, anything that goes down in Florida, you're more than welcome to come right into our courtroom and we will show it all to you. So we have our Daisy trial, right? Where she is saying, hey, it was self-defense. And the prosecution team, they are saying, nope, not self-defense. He was cheating and you were mad. So I am going to open up that room. I am getting the link right now so I can drop in the chat, so we can all head over there and get started. I'm pretty sure, you know, Sarah, she does like the text message. I'm pretty sure she'll be sending something to the news station pretty soon in regards to her feelings in regards to her conviction. And as soon as I see something on that, I'm gonna definitely bring it to you, because she does like to talk. You know, that's what I will say. She definitely likes to talk and text. So here is the link to the other room, guys, if you want to head over there, and we'll start with our current trial that we're covering, Florida versus Daisy Link. Today is day 2. Seen a lot of things where she seemed a lot embarrassed, very embarrassed about a lot of her actions. We heard the 911 call where she was like, who did it? Then it went from who did it to I did it because he was trying to hurt me. So we kind of like in between some things here. All right. So I will see you guys over there. And we'll get that party started right now.